Hey there, before we get started today, we have a favor to ask you. The Moth is conducting our annual audience survey so we can learn a bit more about you, and we'd really value your feedback. We're hoping you'll take just a few minutes to tell us a bit about yourself and share your thoughts about the show. Please visit surveynerds.com/themoth to take the survey today. That's surveynerds.com/themoth.
Welcome to the Moth Podcast. I'm your host, Dan Kennedy, and this week we're celebrating moms by giving them the stage. We have two stories from moms getting creative during the trials and tribulations of parenting. I feel like my mom got kind of creative. One time we were going to Albertsons in Southern California to grocery shop, and I was probably 7 years old. To this day, I still remember my telephone number from when I was 7 years old in Southern California, because as we were walking across the parking lot, with each step, she made it very fun to memorize our number. With each step we took, we had to say 7140466. Sometimes she just got sort of sick of us, but she often got creative. First up, Allie Muldrow. Allie told this story at a story slam we did in Madison, Wisconsin in 2017. The theme of the night was wonders. Here's Allie.
I'm a parent. I'm so much a parent. I have a 2-year-old and a 7-year-old. Right now, I have a pair of leggings in my coat pocket that have pee on them. That's how I'm living my life these days. But I think when you're pregnant, when I was pregnant with my first daughter, I had there's all kinds of things you wonder about. You wonder what that person's going to look like and what they're going to be like. But there's the one thing you're sure of, and that's that you're not going to parent like your parents. You're like, I'm going to be everything that they were not. And I'm going to do all the things that they were great at. But I'm totally going to be an evolved, like way cooler parent than them. And it's interesting how that doesn't work out, that moment when you just like hear your like mom or dad or mom and dad like just come out of your mouth, just like one of their catchphrases. Like my parents were really into like kind of the rhetorical question, and but one that like I feel very much shaped me, and I'm sure other people in the audience have had this question, was like, do you want a reason to cry? Right? I am not a crier. I am pretty sure that question has permanently made me a person that feels there's really never any good reason to cry. However, when I heard myself start to say that sentence to my 3-year-old, I had to really start thinking about the kind of person I am versus the kind of person I want my kid to get to be. I started wondering what it would be like if I encouraged her to cry, if I made crying into a good thing, into an okay thing. So she was crying about something really important, the way like 2-year-olds cry. They're just like, why the hell would you put my shoes on right now? How could you have done this to me? And I was like, I'm going to just embrace it. And so I decided that I was like, okay, keep crying. You got to keep crying because your stuffed animals only drink tears. And so I lined up all of her stuffed animals, and I was like, you got to keep it going. You got to keep it going because like the frog has not had a drink yet. And she was like, I'm trying to cry. And each one would get a drink, and then she'd be like laughing and crying. And it was like this really proud moment in parenting where I had, where I had found a space to be comfortable with something that I hadn't been comfortable with, that I, wasn't good at in terms of vulnerability, where I'd reconciled a part of myself that I didn't want to pass down. And you don't know if those things like stick with your kids, those like little games, that you play. And eventually she got too old for it, and she was like, I'm just gonna cry, like don't line up the animals, like back up off me, I'm just gonna weep over here. But you wonder if what your kid is gonna keep of the things that you teach them. And recently, her sister was crying because her sister is now 2, and now she cries about when people put her shoes on, or a coat on. But she was crying, and I was like, dude, we got to get going. Like, come on. And Adrian was like, no, keep crying. That's my oldest. That's my 7-year-old. She was like, because your toys, they only drink tears.
That was Allie Muldrow. Allie is the mom of 2 young children, as well as an educator, activist, and doula. She's also on the board of directors for the Fair Wisconsin Education Fund, and she's the co-director of Black Girls Are Magic of Madison. To see some photos of Allie and her kids, head to the extras for this episode on our website, themoth.org. Up next is Michelle Cloud. Michelle told this story at a Milwaukee Story Slam back in 2013, and the theme of the night was busted. Here's Michelle live at the Moth.
So last October, my husband Patrick and I were invited to go to Vegas to celebrate his best friend's 40th birthday. And I didn't really want to go, but he really wanted to go. But the problem was we have 3 kids. The youngest is 7, and she's never been away from us overnight. So we thought we'll take all 3 kids. We'll do family stuff during the day. We'll leave the kids in the hotel room at night and go out for debauchery, and it'll all be good. But the 17-year-old, Meredith, who is our oldest, said, she does a lot of drama. She's a senior in high school, and she said, no, I've got this play competition that weekend. I have to be there. There's no way I can go. So we thought, okay, if we make her go, it'll be miserable. So we decided we'll take the younger 2. We'll let Meredith stay home by herself. Yeah. You see, we didn't see. And we will go to Vegas and it'll all be fine. And Meredith was like, oh, I'm responsible. I'm mature. I never do anything wrong. It'll be fine. What are you worried about? So I said, okay, you're right. So we went to Vegas, and I'd never been. It wasn't as bad as I thought, but, the food was better than I'd expected. And then we came back, and the house was still standing, and it seemed okay, but things were a little off. Meredith had cleaned part of the basement, the part where she entertains friends, and a path to the refrigerator through the unfinished part of the basement. And I thought, that's odd. And then on Monday, after we came back, I was cleaning in the basement, and I found a cardboard box of trash, and I was emptying it into a trash can, and I found this list, and it said things like magazines, table, rock band drum set. It was a list of things she had moved so she could remember to move them back. But she didn't move them back. So there was a list of things, and I'm not a detail person. I never would have noticed these things were moved, but here I have a list of things that were moved, and oh, look, they're still moved. So I thought, okay. So I called Patrick at work, and I said, honey, Meredith had a party while we were gone, and I want to confront her, but I want to wait till you get home, and I don't know what to say. And he said, why do you want to do that? Don't tip your hand. You'll just make her be more careful next time. He said, the house is still standing. The police weren't called. Don't say anything. So I said, okay. Sounds good. I don't really want to bust her. So I didn't say anything. And so then she would say, you thought I was so immature and irresponsible, and I would just bite my tongue. Then on Tuesday, she came home from school and said, Mom, I need to talk to you. And I said, why? What's up? And she said, it's not good. And I said, oh, well, what's up? And she said, I got called to the office today, and I got in trouble at school because I was drinking at a party. And I said, oh, where were you at a party where you were drinking? Here. It's like, really? Yes, while you were gone. So she got in trouble at school. She had to miss one of the competitions of the play, the whole reason she couldn't go to Vegas in the first place. And she got kicked out of the National Honor Society. Yeah. And she was allowed to appeal that decision. So she appealed that decision and she wrote a letter, and there was a hearing, and she was allowed to take a character witness, and she asked me to go as her character witness. And after saying, "Are you really sure that I am the best character witness at this point in our relationship?" I decided, okay, I've already said all the stuff that parents say. So I went with her. And there were 5 teachers there, and we were in this room, and she got to say why she thought she should get to stay in the National Honor Society. And then they asked me why, what I had to say. And I kind of realized at that point, it's not just her that's busted. I'm busted too. I'm the mom that went to Vegas and left her 17-year-old at home to have a drinking party. Like, who is in trouble here? But what I told these teachers was, yeah, she made a mistake, but she's a good person. She's honorable. She's smart. She's giving. She's generous. She didn't turn in any of the other National Honor Society members who were at the party. And, I think that what's really important when people make mistakes is that they learn from those mistakes and move forward, and not that they're just people who never make mistakes to begin with. And I was kind of talking about her and kind of talking about me. But they kicked her out anyway. And in the end, though, I think it was kind of a really good experience for me, not so much for her. I mean, she got kicked out of National Honor Society, but it was kind of nice because I got to say these things. I got to articulate things about being a good and honorable person that I might not have articulated otherwise, and particularly in front of my daughter, who is here, by the way, tonight. And, all in all, it was kind of a good bonding experience getting busted with my daughter. So.
Yeah, there's Michelle Cloud. Michelle is a mom of 3 and an organizing manager with Everytown for Gun Safety. She's also told a number of stories on the Moth Story Slam and Grand Slam stages. When we followed up with Michelle, she told us her daughter Meredith, now 23, recently spent a weekend back at home watching her younger sister while Michelle was in New York. Michelle did not find any evidence of a party. If you're looking to hear from more rock star moms, you can check out the Moth's 3rd book, Occasional Magic. You can read about a mother of triplets traveling to Antarctica, and another who dedicates her life to helping others become parents after adopting her own child. Occasional Magic is out now, and it's available wherever you get your books. That's going to do it for this time around, but we'll be back soon with more stories. Until then, from all of us here at the Moth in New York, have a story-worthy week.
Dan Kennedy is the author of Loser Goes First, Rock On, and American Spirit. He's also a regular host and storyteller with The Moth.
Podcast production by Julia Purcell and Paul Ruwest. The Moth Podcast is presented by PRX, the Public Radio Exchange, helping make public radio more public at prx.org.
The Glenlivet Scotch Whiskey is a proud sponsor of the Moth Podcast. At the Glenlivet, they're firm believers that life is better when there's more inclusivity in it, that there's room at the bar for everyone. That's why they want you to enjoy their single malt the way you want. Neat, with soda, or with your cat. Their founder, George Smith, didn't distill his single malt with rules around it. He intentionally distilled his scotch for everyone to enjoy how they want it. Enjoy responsibly. 2019, the Glenlivet Distilling Company, New York, New York. This content is intended for individuals 21 years of age or older.
We need to talk about something. Constipation, abdominal pain, and bloating. You tell yourself it's not that bad. You take laxatives, modify your diet and exercise routine, but thinking about it all the time is frustrating. This doesn't have to define you. If your constipation and abdominal symptoms come back again and again, and you don't know why, then it may be time to seek help. Go to ohmygut.info/podcast, where you can learn more about your symptoms. That's ohmygut.info/podcast.
The Moth is brought to you by Progressive, one of the country's leading providers of auto insurance. With Progressive's Name Your Price tool, you say what kind of coverage you're looking for and how much you want to pay, and Progressive will show you the options that fit within your budget. Use the Name Your Price tool and start an online quote today at progressive.com. Price and coverage match limited by state law.
Hey there, before we get started today, we have a favor to ask you. The Moth is conducting our annual audience survey so we can learn a bit more about you, and we'd really value your feedback. We're hoping you'll take just a few minutes to tell us a bit about yourself and share your thoughts about the show. Please visit surveynerds.com/themoth to take the survey today. That's surveynerds.com/themoth.
This is the Moth Radio Hour from PRX. I'm Catherine Burns, and this time we're going to hear about occasional magic, those moments of wonder and clarity that we sometimes stumble upon in life. We're just going along in the day-to-day, minding our own business, and then bam, suddenly something happens, and we discover a piece of truth in our lives. These moments often sneak up on me, and I can miss them entirely if I'm not paying attention. Magic is definitely at play in our first story, told by Chinjarai Kumanika. He told the story at a Moth event we produced in Las Vegas, where he partnered with Nevada Public Radio and the Black Mountain Institute. Here's Chinjarai Kumanika live at the Moth.
So I was at this family barbecue earlier this summer. I don't know if y'all go to Black Family Barbecues. Frankie Beverly Mays is playing. I was eating a second plate of mac and cheese I promised myself I wouldn't eat. And I was doing some card tricks for my 7-year-old nephew, Jonathan. And after a couple tricks, Jonathan looks up at me and he kind of goes, how did you do it? How did it work? And I was like, it's magic. Got excited. He's like, oh, magic. He kept asking me. I'm doing more tricks. He kept asking me, right? And then, for some reason, I started to think, well, maybe he's asking me something bigger than the card trick. I was projecting, right? And so, I for some reason, I went way too dark on this, right? I started to, this kid's got to know. This is the time for this 7-year-old kid to understand, this is a trick. So I was like, I called him on, I was like, yo, come here. I showed him how the trick worked, right? And then I was like, look, man, this is a trick, man, but you got to deal with reality. You just saw his 7-year-old face just drop, and I knew that I had failed as an adult human. I told him that there was no magic. And it's funny that I would be the one to deliver that, because my own relationship to this question is much more complicated. You see, when I was about 13, my aunt went to go live in Senegal, and she invited me to come stay with her for a month or so over the summer. Now, like a lot of African Americans, I don't really know exactly where my ancestry is from, but I'd never been out of the country, so it was so exciting to go to Africa, right? And when I landed in Dakar, it was like everything was new. I'm talking about just to go get some bread from the store was like an adventure, right? It's like everything, new buildings, new languages and smells. And my aunt was going to be really busy while I was there. So she hired a guy to kind of look out for me. And his name was Ron. He's about 30 years old. And he was a chaperone, right? So during the time I was there, Ron was like my big brother. He told me about his life. Not just in Dakar, right? Just as an older man. And I told him about my life. Because, things were starting to change a little bit, I was coming to terms with what it meant to be a guy in this black male body that looked tough, but I had the heart of a podcaster, like a Lord of the Rings fan or something. Right? And at that, I was trying to also figure out how I would make decisions. Could I trust myself? My parents had done a pretty good job of sheltering me from the ugliest parts of life, but I was living in Baltimore in the 1980s, and it felt like the danger could walk right up to your door. I told Ron about the time I was just playing tag with my friends, and the police had followed us home and questioned my mother. I told them a lot of my friends, knew drug dealers and had seen people killed, and some even had guns. Ron was like horrified, right? This wasn't the America that he knew about. And he wanted to get some protection for me. So Ron knew of this elder who was skilled in making certain special talismans that could actually protect you from guns and knives. And he's like, people in Senegal have these things, and he wanted to get one for his African-American little brother to protect me from the violence of America. So the next morning, we found ourselves on a bus going out to the outskirts of Dakar. We got off the bus and walked into this small white house. When I walked in, I met this elder. I was instructed to go into the bathroom by myself, take a bath. I put on this robe. And when I came out, they handed me this white towel, and it was filled with this little black powder. And Ron and I took that towel to a local tailor and had it sewn into an animal skin belt. And I remember when it was done, just holding it in my hands, feeling its power, like, yeah, now I'm going to be protected. But then Ron told me there was a catch. He goes, in order for this belt to work, you have to believe in it. And in order for you to believe in it, we got to go back to the elder. You got to put the belt on, and then I'm going to have to shoot you. What? Ron, little brother, no, I wouldn't put you in harm's way. Look, I know what you're thinking, right? Like, this is supposed to be a real easy decision for me, right? I mean, I wasn't the most street savvy kid, but I did know rule number 1. Don't let people shoot you, even if they ask nicely. But, I wanted that belt to work too, right? I mean, can you imagine going back as a kid to Baltimore with this belt? That was like some Marvel comic type stuff. I was like, wanted that to work. And then also, why was Ron doing this? Like, Ron knew my aunt, there must be, what was going on? I didn't understand. And I thought about it over and over, and I was like, I just pictured myself looking down the barrel of a gun while Ron shot. I was like, hell no, I can't do that. Can't do it. I told Ron, he was disappointed, and we went back to Dakar. At this point, I made an executive decision not to tell my aunt that the chaperone she had hired just asked if he could shoot me. But, I did want to know, like, what my aunt thought, because my aunt was like a real no-nonsense person. So I was like, surely she'll validate my responsible choice here. So I asked her, hey, auntie, like, what do you think about talismans or like those kind of like, she said, well, actually, I think they work, but only if you believe in them. Man. So I went back to, after the summer's over, I went back to Baltimore, and I kept this belt, and as for some reason I held on to it, even as I got older, right? Moving from house to house. Sometimes I would put it on, look in the mirror, and I would just wonder if it works. It was really frustrating, because I kind of felt like I had just missed this chance to know. Should I have trusted Ron? Should I have trusted myself? I would never know. A couple of years later, my aunt went back to Africa, this time to Ghana, to live for a couple of years. And once again, she invited me to come stay with her. This time, we were in Ghana, and I spent a lot of time with a friend of mine named Kwabena. And Ghana is a very religious place. But Kwabena could never quite figure out what my religion was, right? He was, all he knew was I had long dreadlocks and I didn't eat meat. So he just decided I was a Rasta, a pure Rasta. That's what he used to call me. He would yell at anybody who tried to give me meat. He's a pure Rasta. Leave him alone. But Kwabena and I got closer, and I wanted Kwabena to know, like, that wasn't really the whole story. So I told him, I said, Kwabena, I respect the Rastafarian tradition, I really do, but I'm not a Rasta. And he was like, well, what are you? Are you a Christian? He was a Muslim, right? So he was like, are you a Muslim like me? I was like, no. He said, well, what is it? I said, well, I kind of respect traditional African religions because I feel like that's what was taken away from us. When I said that, Kwabina's eyes got real big. He was like, oh, you practice the traditional religion. He said, well, my family practices this religion too, right? I want to take you to my village and show you how it really goes down. So once again, I found myself on a bus early in the morning, headed to the outskirts of a West African town. And this time on the bus, Kwabina's telling me, like, man, our family's ways are a whole system, right? It's not just tricks, but there are some things that to your eyes are going to seem like magic. We got off the bus. It was early in the morning. It was kind of dark. He said his grandfather had been the keeper of the family secrets, but his grandfather had passed the secrets down when he died to a young priest, and that was who we had to find. But after walking from house to house and knocking on doors, we quickly learned that this isn't the kind of person that you find. He has to find you. And at 11 o'clock at night, we're in a bar, pretty much having given up, and he found us. He walked in. He had an assistant with him. And at that point, I was kind of like, I was a little bit, I was like disappointed, but I was also kind of relaxed because I hadn't known what was going to happen. But then he walks in and I was like, oh shit, right? And he says, he comes in and he goes, look, I knew you were here the whole time. He told Kwabina he had to verify that he was really family. And he verified that. He said, I heard about you too. And I did some divination. I have something I want to show both of you. And then we walked out of the bar. And as we walked down like this long dirt road, because now it's night, it's dark. And his assistant stops at this little vendor and buys a machete. I was like, oh, that's interesting. Right. We walk a little further and we stop outside of this shed. And they explain that we're going to go in that shed and there's going to be an initiation. And that initiation is going to involve the machete. Then his assistant starts sharpening that machete. I don't know about y'all, but something about that metal scraping on metal like that just brings everything into focus, right? And I started thinking, right? I was like, okay, he goes in the shed. I'm like, oh, on one hand, man, I could die out here, right? But I also had spent all these years just wondering about the belt, and I was like, I'm here again. So I was like, I'm gonna go in the shed. I can't tell you everything that happened inside the shed, but I'm going to tell you a couple things that went down. First, there were some prayers made in the shed. Second, there was a point where I was given a word by the young priest. And he told me that when I was ready, I should say the word. And then he was going to take that cold, sharp blade of the machete and press it against my chest. And then he would take a piece of wood and bang the machete, really hard into my chest. And then if I said the word, it wouldn't cut. And then he asked me if I was ready. It's like, I took a deep breath. Then I said, I'm ready. And I said the word. And he put the machete, pressed it right, I felt it going into my skin, the sharp blade. And he pulled back, seemed like in slow motion. Bang! Knocked it into my chest. Bang! He knocked it on the other side of my chest. Bang! He knocked it on my arm. Bang! On the other arm. And I looked at my arms, looked at my chest, and there were no cuts. So I made it out of that shed alive. When I reflect back on that night, I don't feel like I'll ever fully understand totally what happened. Especially because, I'm a person who really believes in science, right? I believe in climate change, all epidemiology, everything, disease, I really believe in that. But I had this experience that I can't explain. And I also kind of want a do-over for what I told my nephew that day. He's not here right now, but I want to kind of pretend y'all are Jonathan. And here's what I would tell him if I had to talk to him right now. I would say, Jonathan, listen, a lot of decisions you're going to have to make in life, the safe route is the best route to go. But there are going to be those moments when you got to take that leap of faith, because there is magic. And when the time is right, it'll find you. Thank you very much.
Dr. Chinjerai Kumyika is a scholar, journalist, and artist who researches and teaches in the Department of Journalism and Media Studies at Rutgers University. He's also the co-host and co-creator of Gimlet Media's Peabody Award-winning podcast, Uncivil. I first met Chinjerai when he wrote an article at transom.org called Vocal Color in Public Radio. The article later trended on Twitter and spawned a nationwide discussion about diversity in public media, which I think we can all agree is wildly important. If you'd like to read that article or see a picture of Chinjerai's famous belt from the story, go to themoth.org.
Welcome to the Moth Podcast. I'm Dan Kennedy. Exciting news this week. The Moth's brand new book will be published this Tuesday, March 19th. It's called Occasional Magic. The book was edited by our artistic director and the rest of the Moth's creative staff as well. There is a story that I told on stage a few years ago in this book, actually. It's not the story we're going to hear today, thank God, because the ending to my story is not particularly uplifting. Today we're listening to Ana del Castillo, who is also featured in our new book. Ana told this story at a Moth main stage in San Antonio, Texas, where we partnered with the San Antonio Book Festival. Here's Ana live at the Moth.
20 years ago, I was living out my dream of being an actress and a singer in New York. And at the time, I was a swing on the national tour of Les Miserables. I've actually performed on this stage during that tour. Beautiful theater. And if you don't know what a swing is I understudied all the women, which was awesome. So I was living out my dream when I got a call from my brother Danny letting me know that our father and our brother Alberto had both been, they were both dead. They had both been murdered in our hometown of Miami. My father owned an import and export electronic goods business, and my brother Alberto worked with him and for him. And I didn't know this at the time, but business wasn't going well. So not well that one of them made some sort of shady deal, and that deal went really south. So south that one day some men came into the office and took my father and my brother into the warehouse, and then tied my father's hands behind his back and taped his mouth shut, and then they made him watch as they tortured and murdered his favorite son. Alberto was everybody's favorite. If you had met him too, he would have been your favorite. And then when they were done with that business, they shot and they stabbed my father to death. So I was in a fight with my dad when he died. I wasn't speaking to him. And the day that they died, I had this overwhelming sense of, there was this voice in the back of my head that kept telling me to call him, call them both, tell them that you love them, tell them. And I was just like, no. I had my reasons, and I thought they were good ones at the time. But when I got that call, what I did first was just fall on my knees, and I screamed out loud that I didn't tell my father that I loved him. So, after they died, my life got really small. I had always been the kind of person who was like, first one on the dance floor, first one to laugh, first one to be out there, just first. After they died, I just got off the road, stopped singing, could barely leave my house. I was almost agoraphobic, and I developed, unbeknownst to myself at the time, a panic disorder, which if you've ever, I hope nobody here has ever had a panic disorder, but if you've ever had a panic disorder, you panic because you think you might panic. It's very odd. So I'm going to say something that sounds a little crazy given what I just said, but I'm really, really lucky. I have amazing friends, and they dealt with me during this time like, okay, this is a rough patch you're going through right now, but like they never lost sight of who I was, and they spoke to me, they got me out of myself, they got me out of the house, and they never lost sight of who I was. And one day, one of these friends, Sandy, she says to me, oh, you know what we should do? Whenever one of us hears the other one say, oh, I've always wanted to do X, or I've always wanted to do Y, it becomes then the other person's responsibility to make sure that we do that. And I thought, okay, I'm like barely leaving the house. That might be a good idea for me to do. So fast forward, I don't know, maybe a few months later, she says out of the blue, she says, oh, I've always wanted to skydive. Okay, skydiving. So I thought that if it was just going to be she and I that were going to go skydiving, I was not going to skydive. And I wanted to make sure that we did, like, integrity was a big deal. Do what I say. And so I went around for a while, like introducing, hi, my name's Anna, would you like to skydive? Hi, my name's Anna, would you like to skydive? I just figured that if I got as many people to go along that I would finally do it. So, all right, I ended up getting like 9 people to come along with us that day. So the day comes and we like pile into 2 cars. One is like a neon green Metro Geo or something like that. And the other one was this like boat of a Monte Carlo. And so we drive like 2.5 hours in the middle of New Jersey somewhere. And we get there, and the woman who's driving the Monte Carlo, she only has an American Express, and the place doesn't take American Express. So she's like, I'll be right back. She never comes back. And we're like freaking out because this is like, you know, way before Uber, and we didn't like, we were like, what are we gonna do? Oh my God, I'm freaking out. We're all like conferring like crazy people. And all of a sudden, like out of the corner of my eye, I see this beautiful man come towards us. He looks like he's 8 feet tall and 800 pounds of pure muscle. He's like this Paul Bunyan man. It's like, you know, he's just coming over to us, and I think to myself, you eat, because he's Australian, and I think you eat Vegemite and vagina for breakfast every day. Start here. So he's our jump master, and he gives us this like ridiculous like minute 30-second demo of how to jump from a plane, which is just like, you put your foot, I can't do an Aussie accent, like put your foot here and do this, and then we'll put a shrimp on the Barbie, and then I'll see you up there. It's that kind of thing. So all right, we go to, like, we put on these like onesie outfits and like goggles, and then we go to like what is an outdoor waiting room, and then we're there, and then we watch people go up and fly up, and then they fly, and then they come down to the ground, and it's great. And I start to like freak out a little bit, and the thing that like has me sort of like not run after the woman with the Monte Carlo is that I like 2 things. Is that first of all, everybody's flying up there and jumping, and nobody's dying. And then the other thing is that everybody, people I came with and everybody else, they like once they land, they have that look on their face like the wattage of their inner light has been turned up to maximum. You know that look. And I wanted that because I knew I didn't have it anymore. So finally my name gets called And I like walk over, only I can't feel my body. I'm just like a floating head walking over to the plane. We get into the plane, and the plane is this ridiculously small plane. It's literally small enough where my back is to the pilot's seat and my feet are touching the back of the plane. And we're like, oh, it's claustrophobia. So we start to fly up, and I think it's like, I don't know, 2 or 3 miles up, and I'm like, my adrenaline's pumping in my body, and I'm like, you know, have you ever that like adrenaline feeling where you can't hear anything because the blood in your, it's like, bomb, bomb, bomb in your head. And I have this really weird response to the adrenaline. I like start to sing maniacally Les Mis songs. This one in particular. But the tigers come at night with their voices soft as thunder as they tear your hope apart, as they turn your dream to shame. Yeah, it's all fun and games for you now, but I sang that over and over and over again while I was up on the plane like a crazy person. So we get finally up to like the right altitude, which is like 3 miles above the earth. And we get into jump position, which is like doggy style, crouching right before the plane door thing. And he like straps himself into me, and that might have been fun at another time, but I'm about to jump from a plane. And he opens up the flap, and it's shocking because it's like freezing air that rushes in, and it's like August. It's hot down below, but it's cold up there. And I like take a peek down at the earth, and I think, I'm not jumping from this fucking plane. The hell was I thinking jumping? I'm not doing this. And I start to like, at this point, I am saying this so calmly, but at that point, I was just like, panic. I start to like, I can't. And he's in my ear like, ready? And I'm, no, I'm not just, no. We're doing this kind of thing, right? And he's just like wrestling with me a little bit. No, he's got like 100 pounds on me. The man is huge, you know? He could have just like grabbed me and like thrown me out of the plane. But he does this amazing thing. Because I'm like, and he does this amazing thing. He just like wraps his arms around me. And he whispers in my ear like a lover. He says, I promise you, I will get you down in one piece. And I swear that you are safe with me. And what he says just like opens me up, and I start to cry, and I'm just like letting go. We're having this beautiful moment together. And I realized in that moment that like the day that my father and my brother both died, I died with them. And that I had a choice in this moment. I had a choice to either continue living the pathetic life that I had started to live since my father and my brother both had died, or I could like jump from this plane with this beautiful Aussie man strapped to my back, and I could live. So I chose to live. So then we really get into jump position, which is insane. It's 1 foot on the wing, a knee inside the plane, straddling the open air. Your earth is just, you ready? Yeah, I'm ready. Okay, let's do it. So we jump, and as we jump, we like start facing the earth, and then he turns us around, and I see the plane leave, or we're leaving the plane actually. And then we turn back around, and then we're facing the earth. And I don't know if anybody's ever gone skydiving, but the earth comes at you pretty quickly. And then we go into full, like, flying position. and it's so loud. You're like your lips are literally wrapped around your face because the air is just like, and like at the time I'm just like, and I can't process this at all. I can't process. All I'm feeling is like my panic and my despair and my rage and my grief and all the missing of my father and the fact that I didn't say anything and all that is just like going there and going there. And then just like nothing. So then he taps me on the shoulder and tells me to pull the ripcord, and so I pull the ripcord, and the parachute opens up, and it's so loud before, right? And then all of a sudden the parachute opens, and it's just silence. The kind of silence that's like thick. It does not exist here on Earth. So we float down to Earth. He tells me to bring it in, baby, and we bring it in. My friends all come over to me, and they've got their light up to maximum, and I can feel my own light up to maximum, and we just pile into that stupid neon green Metro Geo, like Keystone Cops, and we don't even drive back to New York. We float back to New York, back to my life, back to figuring out how I could live my life again, one day at a time. I had all this love to give to my father and my brother that I didn't give. And when you don't give love, it rots inside of you. So my life rotted for a little while. But when I jumped from that plane, it stopped. I started figuring out how to tell people, I love you. Even when I was angry. Even when I was really angry. I also told people when I was really angry. I stopped letting things rot inside of me.